invite Abin Chaudhuri, founder and principal of Abin Design Studio, to join us on stage. May I also invite Rajesh Advani of Architecture Live. Next up, Deshna Mehta of Studio Anugraha, as well as Praveen Bavadekar of Thirdspace Architecture Studio, who will be leading this conversation.
This is an amazing kind of a forum to launch this book, and I have had a very small part to play in it, in the sense that I wrote the introduction, and Deshna here has actually designed the book. And so it's a kind of a product of these three people, and of course the work of Abin. What I would like to talk about is also the nature of architectural books to a certain extent, maybe a minute or something. Because one of the things is architecture as a profession, or the architect as a professional, came into being. The architecture existed for millennia, but it was the Renaissance where the architect was first really recognized as a professional in his own right. And that's also the time when you had book publishing come into being with the invention of the printing press. So there is a kind of a shared history of architecture as well as books. And the architectural books came soon after. And then it has been a genre which has been there now for the last 400 years or something like that. And 500 years for that matter. And so it's an architecture for, as a kind of an object, is something which is rooted in place and time. You cannot, it's accessible only to a few. Then an architect's ideas go beyond the building which they have built. And that's where the architectural book also comes in, like the monograph comes in, wherein you can first of all think of the book as also a project in itself, which is tying all these buildings which are in different spaces and time, and which are basically commissioned by others. So we are not in control of that as well. So the monograph becomes a very important part, of this journey.
I think when Rajesh told me about this monograph, and he said that it is not a celebration of individual work, it's kind of a lens of someone else. So that's why he introduced Shimul, and both of all of you came, and there'll be a deep conversations has gone. So the book is also in conversation, and sometimes the projects, the sequence and consequences happened in our projects has never been realized unless otherwise this question asked. So I also kind of discover that, and probably a lens of someone else from outside, that these are the influences from this project is gone to this project, and why you think so. And probably this question triggered me about why I've thought so and why people are asking these questions. So in terms of this particular documentation, it's really interesting for me because it has been seen from a different lens and in deep conversations, which also unfold the story of a journey, because how the practice unfolds, because it's also a kind of, it's a very different, because before I practice, I have not done 7 years of architecture and done beyond architecture everything. So that also a deep kind of impact in my practice. So probably that crafting of everything, even when I requested Deshna to design the book. So it's also kind of, it's also about an architecture, because even making a book is also for me and kind of making something, okay? It's also a crafting. It's like how I try to discover every project. So the book is also a kind of discovery through also a practice, through also as a design, and through also the investigations. So you question many things while you're visiting my projects. So these are a very important part of the process of documenting that book. I think that's an interesting part. And that's why I really enjoy it.
Everything has been accessible now, and books are still expensive. It's not that books were expensive. Now, if you look at monographs traditionally, these were primarily, or I would say, importantly, the voice of architecture practice or architects. And architects were looking for a tool or medium or a way to reach out to masses. And print media was the only way to do that, even if it was very inaccessible. Now, in that print media or those monographs, projects were covered, there was journey of architecture practice, there were some important milestones being covered, there were glossy photographs, but everything in architect's voice, possibly practice's voice. There was an editor's role over there, but also there was hardly any moderation to that voice. Now, we have rightly observed that there is social media now. Everything is accessible, everything is visible. So what is the role of monograph now in these times? Monograph must look beyond what is visible to people already. So in this case, I feel when the practice reaches a point, like Abin's practice reached 2 decades. It is important for Abin to invite, critique from outsiders, or there has to be critical distance, which Abin should himself create and look at his own practice from distance.
Designing an architecture monograph is quite different from most other books, mainly because the work already has its own voice. The role of the book is not to explain it or to frame it too tightly, but to create space for the work to be seen, read, and spend time with care. What made this monograph distinct was, of course, the privilege of engaging with 2 decades of work from Abin's studio. This is a practice that is shaped by long attention to place, to material, to craft, and to collaboration. Rather than imposing an external narrative, the book has tried to follow rhythms that are already present in the work, and how it evolves over time and how certain concerns quietly still persist. Even the grid of the design of the book was derived from the work itself. So the visual structure is really emergent rather than it being applied from outside. The main narrative of the book, as Rajesh has already shared, unfolds through a conversation between Abin and Shimul. This forms the spine of the monograph, offering insight into Abin's journey, inspirations, and influences. Alongside this, a secondary layer organizes the projects by typologies, indicated by color, bands on the book edges to identify and navigate with ease, allowing for different entry points into the book. For the inside pages, we focused on creating a sense of balance using liberal white space and a minimal design language. The aim was first to quietly support the work rather than call attention to the design itself, so that the projects could seamlessly speak for themselves. There is a short visual essay that was curated from the documentation that was shared with us, and this has shaped as an abstract sequence, inviting the reader to move through detail and scale, light and shadow, resemblance and difference, and to encounter the more intangible qualities that architecture carries.